What's going on, guys? So today's video is to talk about one of the few parts of the Coachman Chaparral that we have that requires some repair. It basically is a component that gave me a little bit of an issue, and I want to talk about what it was and what I plan on doing to fix it. So hang tight, I'll be right back. All right, so we are on our way out to the RV because it's about time I tackle a project that's been bugging me for a while. And it's nothing major, but it's definitely one that could become something major if you don't address it. And it's not just something that is going to be on my Coachman Chaparral. This could be an issue that a lot of RVs deal with simply because of how the wiring is ran and how it can sometimes create some tension and some pressure behind some of the switches that you may not know exists. So on our 2016 Coachman Chaparral 360 IBL, I came out to it one day, and when I was extending the main slide, I noticed that the button kind of stuck, and I really didn't know what was causing it. I figured maybe the button was just getting worn out or there was something wrong with it. So I decided to go ahead and order a replacement button. And it's simply one of those toggle buttons that you either press up to have the slide come in or you press down to have the slide go out. That might be the opposite way around, but you know what I'm talking about. What I ended up doing was pulling the panel out and looking at the back of the button. And what I found out was the button itself had started to fall apart. It essentially was pulling away from the main body of the button assembly. It's not something that Coachman builds. It's not something that they do in-house. They simply source these buttons and switch panels from other manufacturers. So this specific button was starting to be stressed out by the cabling that was attached to it. And that cabling was putting enough pressure on the back of the switch that it was causing it to come apart. Well, what I had also noticed was there was a small piece of plastic that had started to melt around the top of that switch. And of course, seeing that alarmed me, so I decided, this is a great opportunity to replace it. What I ended up doing was kind of a temporary fix because we were going to take the RV out the very next day. So I built this panel that is used to extend the switchboard off the wall slightly, and it would relieve some of the pressure on the wires that are back there that feed to that main control panel. Now, the board that I used was about 3/4 of an inch thick, and it essentially just gave a little bit of relief to the wires going to all the switches. I was able to swap the switch out with a new one, and everything was working great. The problem I have now is that it doesn't look factory. It doesn't look nice and clean. So what I want to do is remove what I made and what I put there, and I want to build something that looks a little nicer. I was able to contact Coachman a long time ago, and I spoke to their parts department, and they happily sent me a replacement switch panel without even knowing anything about my YouTube channel, without knowing anything about a collaboration. I had called in long before the collaboration and just talked to the parts people, and I said, you know what, this is what I have going on. I really don't want to take it to a dealership because I don't want to be lost without it for several weeks at a time potentially, and I can do the work myself. I'm pretty knowledgeable on wiring. And they said, okay, well, we'll send the part to you. So we are on our way out to the RV. I'm going to show you what I've done, essentially the workaround, the switch that I installed, as well as the spacer and the panel that I put behind it. And I only used wood that I had available actually in my cargo trailer, and I was able to cut it up and attach it together and was able to make it work in kind of a temporary makeshift way. Well, I want to make it look a lot nicer, a lot cleaner, and that's why we're going out today. So hang tight, I'll be right back. All right, so we're now at the RV, and I want you to see this kind of hodgepodge of wood that I put together here just to relieve some pressure off of the back of this specific switch. Now, I cut out the bottom side so I could fit this little two-way toggle switch in here that would allow me to plug it in, and it wired in directly the same way as these existing switches that were here. But that is the reason why this specific panel is going to be replaced. I want it to look nicer. I'm going to take all this off and make a new one that looks a lot better and a lot more clean. Now, this is wired up properly, and there's nothing wrong with this setup other than the fact that I don't like the way it looks. And again, I don't really care for this larger switch that doesn't match the other switches. But if I plan on selling this unit, if I plan on getting rid of it to get a new one, I want to make sure that whoever gets this gets it in as good a condition as possible. Now, these walls are relatively thin, and because they're thin, the wiring that comes up and then has to make a sharp curve to connect to the back of these switches is stressed out. That's the reason why I said almost any RV you get, unless there's a dedicated large space that's deep behind here, you're probably having that same type of pressure applied to the back of your switches. So I think in most cases, you're probably never going to have an issue. But in my case, this one switch right here was being stressed out. It was being pulled on from the back, and the switch itself was coming apart. So I wanted to address that. And again, by adding simply 3/4 of an inch of backing to it and spacing this off the wall a hair, it gave me the ability to reduce the stress and pressure from the back of the switch. So I am going to take the new switch panel, take it back to the house, and we're going to modify it there. And I'm also going to make a new surround panel here that's going to look a lot more blended in and match the existing wood trim that's in here. So hang tight. This is going to be a pretty cool project. Okay, so now it's just deciding on the wood to use. I could use red oak. It would definitely have the cleanest look of everything, and I might. Just one small piece like that would actually be enough. Or I could use poplar. Less expensive. It's a lighter wood, a little bit more porous, but it would also work really well. It also looks really nice. Definitely need to use a finished grade board. Okay, so I'm going to get one 6 by 4 foot strip of red oak and one of poplar. Okay, so after looking at the different colors, it looks like we're going to go with this Mission Oak in a satin finish. This one right here definitely looks a little lighter on the can than it does on here, but this is what we think it's going to look like. Now, Coachman says that it's a pecan, but pecan is definitely too light. So we're going to go with this Mission Oak in a satin finish. Okay, so before I get started taking my measurements and cutting off of this, the first thing I'm going to do is plane this down. And the reason I'm going to plane it down is because when this sits in the store, it can sometimes develop a warp or it can develop kind of a bend to it. And what I want to do is have this thing completely flat on both sides. And the way I'm going to do that is to use a planer that I have. Because when this is said and done, I'm going to have two pieces that are going to have to butt up against each other and then have to be the exact same thickness. Okay, so now I have a planed board. It is smooth on both sides. It'll still require some sanding, but I know that it is no longer bowed at all, and that's exactly what I was looking for. Now I can take my measurements and I can make my cuts. Okay, so I have both boards cut to the right length, and I have them also cut properly here. They butt together really well. Now I simply need to measure the opening for the switch panel right here so it will fit right inside of this space. Okay, so everything looks like it's working out well. I plunged cut this portion right here, so basically what that means is I just took my miter saw, plunged into it. This is going to look way off because that was simply my little sketch just to kind of give me a roundabout idea of where the control panel would sit. But as you can see, when the control panel is on here, everything lines up perfectly well. So next, I need to glue this top half to this bottom half. Once I do that, I'm going to put some clamps on it to put enough pressure to keep that glue bonded. But then we'll be ready to sand it down again and then stain it.